Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, yep,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. It may be a little delayed, but I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like it's delayed or something. Let's try something else. Let's
Okay.
try. Hold on. Let me try to go on this other alternate internet because we're without power right now. So the whole city, I had to do it in the car.
Okay.
Yeah. How maybe my speed is not too far away from you. I don't know how far. Like does it seem like it's a big delay when I'm talking?
No, you sound like we having a normal conversation.
Oh, okay. Well then, yeah, we can keep it going then. Okay. So, all right, guys, we have Nadia on. You saw a little
Hello.
bit of my. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So the reason why I wanted to have you on as somebody that's professional, that's a scientist, that's an entomologist, that's a urban farmer, somebody that deals with this stuff for a living.
Yes.
I get these questions every day about primarily the hybrid thing, the acidic thing, and what I wanted to do was just to provide proper information, not to prove myself right. It's not about that, but to prove the information because I want to know the information. Maybe some things that I've been studying are correct or they're incorrect. So I just want to make sure that we're all properly educated on what's going on. So without further ado, I want to give you the floor and allow you to let the people know who you are and what you've been doing, and we can go from there.
Okay. My name is Nadia Ruffin. I'm actually located in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm an entomologist, a scientist, and an urban farmer. An entomologist is a person that studies insects. I'm also a scientist. I went to school. I went to Ohio State, and I graduated with a bachelor's with animal sciences in agriculture. I also have a master's in entomology, and I'm an urban farmer. So here in Cincinnati, what I do is I have three different things that I do. I do research, so I do my own independent research, mostly plant and insect research. But I also go around and I teach youth, particularly Black youth, about the agriculture industry beyond just farming. Because when you say agriculture, people instantly think of farming, and they don't realize that there's a multitude of different careers, paths people can take, and things like that. There's a lot of science, there's a lot of math, there's a lot of the STEM fields that fall right under agriculture. Ooh, sorry, my
All
phone
good.
fell. um, so so along with that, I teach youth about the agriculture industry and try to push Black youth into being interested in agriculture, so they'll actually, go to school and major in that particular, say if it's like poultry science or if it's actual horticulture or whatever, they actually go and pursue a career in that industry. Then I also do urban farming here in Cincinnati. I bought an empty lot, and what I do is I grow produce here in the city, but I also teach classes and teach people how to grow their own food. Um, I teach organic, like pest management as well as organic growing, because that's what has messed up the environment as well as the world, because of this industrial type of agriculture. I try to show people how they can do things just almost as like nature intended, even in controlling insects and things. There's things you can do. So I teach about that, and then I also teach people how to grow. If they have like a small space or something, they can use hydroponics, aquaponics, and I teach those type of classes along with beekeeping as well as keeping chickens and things like that. So I do a lot of things here in the city, agriculture and science based.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So uh, the major thing that I want to get into is starting with the plants, and then you can kind of move out from there on what you think is very important for everybody to know, the things that we need to know, because I deal with nutrition. And the major question that I wanted to ask, that I wanted you to elucidate on for the audience, is the question about the hybrids.
Okay.
First of all, what a hybrid is, how it's grown or whatever, and is it awful for us to consume?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So a hybrid is an actual, and we're going to talk about plants, but a hybrid is anything where you cross two particular organisms that are from the same family, but may not be from the same genus. Like we know about the hybrid when you cross a donkey, I'm sorry, a horse and a mule, you get a donkey. So the same thing can happen with plants. The only thing when you're crossing mammals and things like that is that you produce a organism that should be sterile. Now plants are different. So you can cross plants with other plants. So say you had like a cherry tomato and you crossed it with a beefsteak. Those are those really big tomatoes. You can produce a tomato that will fall in the middle of those two. And what is supposed to happen is that you're supposed to get the best characteristics from both of those parents. So if the cherry tomato was the mother and the pollen came from the beefsteak tomato, which was the father, they took that pollen, they made this tomato that fall in the middle of those. Um, Basically, you'll have the best characteristics of both of those plants. Now, there's nothing wrong with consuming hybrids. Most of the food that we eat now, most of the fruits and vegetables that we eat now are hybrids. They've been developed either naturally or they've been developed, humans have intervened and did crosses and things like that. There was no splicing and things that goes on with that when you can do a hybrid. All you do is take pollen from one particular plant and you put it into another one and you can produce a fruit. Now that differs a lot from when you talk about genetically modified organisms. So genetically modified, or they're using a new term called genetically engineered, is where they actually go into a lab and they take DNA out of these different organisms that don't even fall in the same family. Like the best example that I could use is the BT corn. So BT is Bacillus thuringiensis, is a bacteria that they use to control caterpillars on corn and other you can use it on other crops as well. Well, what scientists did, they took the BT gene that produces the toxin that actually makes caterpillars sick, and they took that gene and they put it into the corn's genome, which is the corn's genetic code, and then they allowed that corn to be micropropagated in a lab. And what they did is they produced corn plants that express that bacteria gene. Um, so so now you have a corn that has not only corn DNA, but it also has bacteria DNA in it to produce that toxin. So when the caterpillars start feeding on that corn, what should happen is that toxin should start being produced by that corn, and it will actually kill those caterpillars that may get down into the ears and things. Now, that's totally different than hybrids. With hybrids, like I say, all you're doing is taking pollen and you're crossing plants and you can produce other plants. So you can eat hybrids. I mean, everything from the oranges to the apples to, those are all hybrids. There's nothing wrong with them. What would be wrong with them is if there's pesticide and things on them, when when we get conventionally grown produce, there's going to be pesticide and other chemicals on there that can make you sick. Also, with the genetically modified, there's not enough data right now to say if it does affect your health or if it does not affect your health. I'm thinking a lot of the stuff that we're seeing, like the cancers and stuff, is not necessarily from the actual genetically modified organisms, but it's from the chemicals that are used on those plants. And even in the animals and things that we're consuming, it's all these chemicals and preservatives and things that are actually, reacting with cells in the body, and it's producing these cancers and autoimmune diseases and stuff like that. Can you still hear me?
Okay. Okay. So you're telling me that, yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Can you hear
I
me?
can
Hello,
I can
hello.
hear you.
You got me?
Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's freezing up a little bit, but you know we're catching back up. So the I guess my additional question. So, what would you? So when it comes down to lemons and carrots and pineapples, you would eat that from what
Yes.
you know as an urban farmer, as somebody that's a scientist that deals with soil and deals with this for a living. You're saying that you don't see any issues with it, with how it's created or any of that?
No, I don't see any issue with how it's created as far as when you're doing hybrids, when you're just using straight pollen and you're crossing plants and things. Like I said, we do that. We've done that for thousands of years anyway. Humans has, as well as that happens out naturally in the wild. When bees go from plant to plant and they go from flower to flower, they're always picking up pollen. So if they take pollen, say there's a particular type of squash plant growing and there's another type of squash plant growing, the bee's not going to decipher like, oh, this is particular type of squash and this is another type of squash. They're just going to go because they see the flowers there and they're going to actually take pollen from one to the other, and that can cause cross pollination, which is called hybridization. Um, the only issue that will occur is when, if you harvest seeds from those crossed plants, you're not going to get that cross plant again. What you're going to get are, if you plant those seeds, you're going to get plants that grow that look like the original parents. So you'll get a plant that you might have some plants that look like the cherry tomato, like we were using in our example earlier, and then you also get some that look like the parent, the father that was the beefsteak. You're not going to get that cross anymore. The only way to get that cross again is that you will have to cross that cross with itself to produce seeds that will always produce that cross again, which takes us into another term, which is heirloom. I know people, they say that a lot too. So an heirloom is any seed that's been passed down from 50 years or more. So it's been produced and it has at least 50 years of history. So heirlooms, they can be also hybrids. There's a lot of hybrid plants that are heirloom seeds, but there's also some that are pure. The thing is with an heirloom, like I said, it has to have at least 50 years of history being passed down, whether by a family. We have a lot of heirloom seeds that came from slavery, where slaves were actually bringing seeds over to the United States and over to the Caribbean and things like that. Also, companies, they create lines of seeds as well, and if they've had them in production for 50 years, that would be considered an heirloom also.
Okay. Okay. Um, so hybrids do occur naturally in nature. Do you have a name of a few of them that might occur naturally in nature? Some of them.
I
Do
mean,
you
if
know any off the top of your head?
not off the top of my head, like I know a lot of times when you see flowers and you might see like a white flower and to say that same plant produces like a red flower. Like say you have roses outside and you have bees and things that come and take pollen from your white
Yeah.
roses and they take pollen from your red roses and they cross between those two plants. If you took those seeds and planted them, you would get a pink rose, because that DNA has mixed together and it produces a new color.
Yeah.
So that would be like a natural thing, that you had a rose bush outside and then if you planted those seeds, you would get a new color. So that happens a lot if you have similar plants growing in an environment and pollinators are there taking um, pollen back and forth. That can happen out in the naturally. That's the same way thing with apples. Like when we have apple trees and they release the
Okay.
bees, um, you have to have two apple trees to get the actual apple that you're trying to produce. Apple trees are not self-pollinating, so you can't take pollen from the same apple tree and pollinate the flowers with that. You have to have at least two trees. So you can take, say, a red apple tree and a yellow or a green apple tree, and you can cross them. The bees will cross them, and then you'll produce that fruit that you're looking for. But until you have that cross, you're
Okay.
not gonna you're not
Okay.
gonna get anything produced.
Okay. One of the more popular things, because I do juice a lot of well, not a lot, I do juice a decent amount of carrot and oranges and things like that. And I
Mhm.
know that the carrot is a cross
Mhm.
between, I think, the Queen Anne's lace and
Which
something else. So,
Yes.
so so basically, the best attributes of each plant have come together to form the carrot. Is that what I'm to understand based upon your explanation?
Um, it's whatever the say a person was trying to get a certain color carrot. Like the
Yeah.
natural the original carrot was kind of like a white color. We must remember carrots are only roots anyway. They're underground storage for the plant. So people that were growing them, they saw that similar plants when they pulled them up, they would produce this same type of root. So they would. This is how they first, started cross pollinating. They would see if they crossed this, would it produce another root that was bigger, or whatever. So whatever that person is trying to create, if they're trying to create bigger carrots, they're trying to create red carrots, they're trying to create orange, or those little tiny ones. Um, so whatever their characteristic they're trying to do, they're going to pick parents that, exhibit both of those characteristics that they're looking for. Say they want small red carrots, they're going to pick, a small parent, and then they're going to pick another parent that's red, and hopefully when they cross that, it'll give them that characteristic that they're looking for. So it doesn't always mean it's the best. It just means whatever they're looking for, they're going to breed that into that particular line of plants.
Okay. Okay. Great. So the next question that I think would be great for the audience to get an answer on: seedless fruit.
Okay.
Seedless grapes. There's a lot of seedless stuff going on right now. I myself believe that the seed is the nutrition. So even though if I can't get a seeded grape, I would settle for a seedless grape. But can you break down if there are any detriments or the benefits? What's the major differences between seeded and seedless? Because we got a lot of seedless, and it's hard to avoid not eating seedless.
Okay, so the reason seedless things were produced because consumers were complaining. They were even complaining because they had to spit the seeds out, or they didn't know what to do with all these seeds once whatever they were eating, once they cut it open and they were consuming that, they didn't want those seeds there. So how they did that, depending on the plant, sometimes they use chemicals, as well as sometimes they use what they do is they'll cross plants back with parents and things like that to produce a sterile plant. Now the seed itself, the seed isn't necessarily nutrition. The seed is there to produce another plant. So if you're trying to produce plants and your plant's not producing seeds, then that's going to be a disadvantage to you because you can't, harvest those seeds and use them again. The nutrition aspect of any fruit comes from the nutrients that are available in the soil, or say they're grown in hydroponics, whatever's in the environment that they're in. So if that soil doesn't have enough nutrients in it, or if they're grown in hydroponics and the water doesn't have nutrients in it, and it's not going to have the nutrients that it needs. Now, when a seed first germinates, it has all the nutrients that it needs to get it to the first set of leaves. That's for the plant. We got to remember, when things are growing out in nature, they're not necessarily growing for humans. They're growing for their own survival. We just happen to utilize these things for our own survival. But in reality, they're actually,
Good point.
they're actually exhibiting these things because they're trying to survive just like we are. So, like I say, when it comes to seedless, you can cross plants back with parents, or you can cross plants with, crosses, and you keep crossing until you create like a triple or a quad of the same genetic code, and then what will happen is it'll make that plant produce a sterile seed. Also, they use chemicals that they can put on the plant, and it'll make it switch to, like a feminized plant. This is very common with marijuana, with cannabis plants. They can spray chemicals on the plant to make the plant feminine. What it'll do is it'll produce pollen that's feminine pollen, and then they'll take that pollen and they'll pollinate all the other females in there with that, and what it'll produce are these feminized seeds, which means these seeds will only produce supposedly female plants, but they're finding that sometimes what'll happen is these plants can turn into hermaphrodites and things with those seeds. But as far as the nutrient aspect, that's going to come from your soil or whatever medium that you're growing your things in. And if you don't have those nutrients, those elements available for the plant, then it's not going to be able to absorb them and use them what they're going to use it for, but it'll just actually be in the plant, and that's what we utilize them for ourselves. But like I say, in actuality, they use those nutrients to survive for themselves.
Okay. So just to be clear, you're saying that a seedless grape still has similar or the same nutrition as a seeded grape. It just wouldn't
Yes,
be able to reproduce itself. So you can eat
exactly.
seedless fruits and still get
Yes,
nutrition from them. Because that's
exactly.
very big. That's very important.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it like I say, the nutrients itself is coming from the actual soil or the actual elements that the whatever container or whatever system that you're growing that plant in, whatever you put into it, that's the nutrients that it's getting. That's why we add fertilizers and things or compost, because that's where the nutrients are coming from. Now whatever system that you're growing it in, that determines how your plant gets it. If it's in soil, it has to create those tap roots where it goes down into the soil. The nutrients have to be soluble in water for the plant to actually absorb it. Now, if you're in hydroponics, most of the nutrients are dissolved in the water. The roots are in the water, and they're actually going to take those nutrients up directly out of that water. So, like I say, however you're growing your plants and whatever you're providing them, that's how they're going to be either healthy or not. Also, light and a lot of other things go into that. pH and all types of things go into that as well. So that determines how nutrient dense or how nutrient lacking your plant is going to be based off a lot of different environmental factors.
Okay. So the soil is definitely a big factor, and
Yes,
pretty much all of this stuff.
yes.
The GMO, we see a lot of things. What would you recommend that we avoid, as much as possible, based upon your knowledge in terms of the GMO? What would you say, like, try to avoid these things right here as much as possible? And the GMO foods, I think you said that we're still missing, the jury is basically still out on what it can and what it would and what it wouldn't do to our health, but the chemicals are probably the most damaging aspects from what I heard you say earlier. But
Yes.
what would you recommend for us to avoid GMO wise as much as possible? The foods,
Okay.
the top.
Well, there's not a lot of GMO plants. It's so funny because I'll hear people say hybrid and they instantly think GMO. But the main GMO plants are our commodity plants. So that's our corn, um, beets. They use sugar beets to make sugar. Um, if they have GMOs, it's going to be those commodity plants. I can't think of the other one, but it's not a lot of GMO plants. Also, if you're going to grow your own plants and you're going to go to the store and buy seeds, those seeds are not going to be GMO seeds. GMO seeds are only sold to large commercial farmers because of two reasons. Number one, it costs a lot of money to make those seeds. And number two, they want to the companies like Monsanto and things that actually produce these seeds, they want to keep a record of who has them, because what happens is once that person say they're growing corn out on the field, a lot of farmers when they grow corn, what they'll do is they'll let some of their corn grow all the way out, and they'll go back in and they'll collect those ears for actual seed. Well, if you're growing GMO corn from Monsanto, you can't do that. Once your crop is done for that year, they come in and they collect any seeds that were produced that you didn't sell as far as your crop. Any seeds that you try to save, they're going to come in and confiscate them because they want you to buy those seeds again next year. So when it comes to GMO seeds, you're not going to have GMO seeds in those little packets that you get at the grocery store and the hardware store, because they can't monitor that. They can't monitor saving seeds as well as planting. It's too many people going out buying those seeds. So those GMO seeds are only for those commercial farmers. So those big commercial farmers that are growing hundreds and thousands of acres of, say, corn or soybeans. Soybean is another plant that is a GMO. Um, uh, they can't monitor the everyday person, so you're not going to be able to buy GMO seeds like at a grocery store. Now, I've seen farmers selling their GMO corn on places like eBay and things. The direct farmer themselves, they're selling seeds that they may not have used, and they're trying to compensate getting some of that money back. But you're not going to be able to buy GMO seeds at your local grocery store or anything like that.
Okay. Okay. We
So
see a lot of.
go ahead.
Huh?
I'm just gonna say, so things like your tomatoes, even if it says hybrid, they're not GMO. If you're growing squash plants, all that stuff, watermelons, even if it says seedless, those are not GMOs. Those are hybrids that they're seedless and things like that. So it's okay if you eat them. If you're going to eat hybrids and you try to collect those seeds and try to grow those same plants the following year, like I told you earlier, you're going to get plants that look like the original parents. So you can't really save those seeds if you're thinking you're going to get that same thing. You can grow them out, but you're just not going to get that same plant.
So you're telling me that a watermelon can be a hybrid too?
Yes, there's lots of hybrid watermelons. What they do is they take there's different types of watermelons. So there's those really big ones that look oblong, then there's circular ones, and they can cross those and get, like a different shape, different colors. There's yellow watermelons, there's orange, like flesh ones and things like that. So yeah, you can cross those and produce other types of watermelons, and that's what they do. That's how they produce a lot of those.
So that's how they get the yellow watermelon, by doing that.
No, actually, there are some actual naturally occurring yellow watermelons, but they can cross those with other ones if they want to make them bigger, or say they want to, darken that color inside of there, or they want to make it like the outside different, or make it like a thinner skin and things like that. They can cross it with other plants, other watermelon plants.
Okay. Now we see a lot of this. This is a big thing: organic versus non-organic. Yes. What is the major difference between buying organic and not buying organic? Some people are concerned and they're really worried about it. What do you have to say about that?
Okay, so in theory, organic should be as close to how nature intended. Now, the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, they came up with their own definition of organic. So they have a list of things that you have to abide by. And they also have a list that they recommend you use. In actuality, if you were growing naturally, you would just grow like nature intended. The USDA, like I said, they have their own definition of what that means. My issue with organic is, number one, the cost, because in house actuality, it should cost less to grow a plant how it should naturally grow. This should be the standard. It shouldn't be the conventional way of spraying all that pesticide on it and all those chemicals and stuff. That should not be the norm. It should be the norm is you grow this without all of that. But the reason that the pesticides and things came along and the chemicals is because these big commercial farmers, they wanted to produce so many, plants at once. When you produce, hello? Okay. When you produce so many, whatever, in one environment, you're going to increase your risk of, disease and problems. And so what happens is when they plant these crops, they're not planting any type of diversity. They're planting monocultures, which is just you're planting one crop and you just have hundreds of acres of this one crop. And what that does, that has an environmental impact. Number one, you don't have any animal or insect diversity. So what happens is when you plant all that corn, all the pests that will eat that corn come in, and they don't have any, predators or anything present because you didn't plant the things that would attract them. Predators, they may need, their young may need a certain plant to live on if their young aren't predatory, or they may need places to nest and hide and things like that. If you don't have that stuff available, what happens is, those insects don't come that will actually help you fight those things. So then what you have to do is you have to go in and you have to spray pesticide to control those pest insects that are going to destroy your crops. So with organic, you're not supposed to spray those, harsh pesticides and chemicals on the plant. You're not supposed to use artificial fertilizers and things. You're supposed to use compost and things. But what I found when I was reading through things, when it comes to organic, you have these big commercial farmers that, they can afford to pay for that label, but they're actually contracting with conventional farmers, and they're taking that particular product that farmer is growing, and then they'll have this farmer grow it really cheap, and then they'll have them harvest it. They'll take it back to that farm, and then they'll just put that label on there. And then in actuality, you're just getting the same thing as that one that's over there that's a lot cheaper. It's the same thing. They just put that label on there.
Got you. Wow. Yeah, this is a lot to take in, for a lot of us. There's one thing that I'd like for you to clear up today for myself, and I'm sure some other people may have this question. This issue about this gluten thing. Can you explain what these plants, like this whole situation about gluten in terms of how this all comes about? Because the way that I understand it is the plant is trying to protect itself from, I believe, invaders or something like that. So
Okay.
I don't know what exactly the term is. So, with the grains and the stuff, the gluten and all that, you can generally cover that a little bit for me?
Okay, so gluten is actually produced when you create flour from wheat and other grass grains. When you add water, that gluten is actually produced, and what that does, it allows you to actually mold that flour so you can make loaves of bread and stuff. I guess back before the production of pesticides, there's no really record of anybody ever having like these gluten related problems. I mean, people used to eat bread.
This is all new to me, like 15 years, 20 years.
Right.
When I was, little, I didn't worry about none of this stuff. This is all new to me.
Right, and I don't think it's the actual gluten. What I'm thinking is the glyphosate that's in the Roundup that's sprayed on these plants. There's been, because I've read a few studies. These are actual scientific studies. You can go and search for them, like on a university website and stuff, where they have all these articles and journals. And they were saying it wasn't the gluten itself, it was the body reacting to the glyphosate that stays in there. Glyphosate, like I said, is Roundup. I don't know if you guys know what that is. That is a herbicide used to control weeds on a field. What they do is they spray this glyphosate before they plant the crop, and what it's supposed to do is keep weeds from coming up. What had happened though is that weeds have become resistant to it, and they're still growing out in the field. So what they'll do is they'll come back and they'll spray again, and so then now it's on the crops and things like that. So a lot of times, even if you rinse it off, sometimes it doesn't all come off, and what happens is that gets mixed into your food, and then you're eating the glyphosate, and and then what happens is your body doesn't identify it, and then it causes things like cancer, as well as autoimmune diseases, all types of things, stomach upset, all that. I don't know if you guys saw the recent guy. He was like a groundskeeper for, I forget what it was, I think it might have been a school, and he had been spraying this Roundup on the grounds, and he ended up with cancer, and he's supposed to have won this case. I don't think he still hasn't gotten the money, and I don't think they're going to let him end up passing away, and it's just going to drag on and on and on. But technically, he's supposed to get all these hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was a black guy. But he's not the only one. Like, this has been going on for decades, ever since Monsanto came in existence and they could make this stuff. This has been going on. This is when all these things started showing up, is when they started using these herbicides and things on the plants. So it could be that some people are sensitive to gluten, but I'm thinking it's more of the chemicals and things that are sprayed on these plants that are the problem.
Okay. Do you want to add anything about the insects and their role, or anything that you think that things that you would cover in your speeches or lectures or stuff like that that we probably would need to know, and then we could go into questions. I'm sure some people have some questions.
Oh yeah, I see lots of questions on here. Um, yes, insects are vital to the environment. Animals are vital to the environment. We all need to realize that, if you get rid of one thing, you're going to affect something else, and you're going to affect something else, and it's a cascading effect that happens. What I try to teach people is, you know, all the insects that are out there on their plants, they serve a role. Like some are pollinators, some are predators, some are what you call pests. I don't like calling them pests because they're just doing what they naturally do. It'd be just like us. The plants could consider us pests because we're eating on them. So, I mean, they're just doing what they naturally do. Now, there are things that you can do to either prevent them from actually even getting on your plants, like you can use insect netting and things like that. But also, knowing what you're dealing with also helps as well. So I try to teach people how to identify certain insects, show them which ones are beneficial, which ones you can, certain things you can do to attract predators of some of these insects that are attacking your plants and things like that. Also show you how to, if you're going to use chemicals, use biological controls like the Bt bacteria. You can use Bt bacteria, the same one that they use in the GMOs. That bacteria, you can actually purchase that bacteria and spread on your plants. It does not affect humans. It only affects whatever insect that particular bacteria targets. So there's Bt for caterpillars, there's Bt for mosquitoes, there's also Bt for beetles. Just knowing when you're spraying this on there, you need to be mindful of what you're spraying, because you could be spraying other insects and killing them, and you're targeting this one, but it could affect others. Like say you're spraying for caterpillars, you could be killing monarch larvae and things like that. So you need to know how to identify, number one, what is feeding on your plants, as well as what's the best non-lethal way I can go about controlling this insect, or what we call pests. So like I say, they're very important. There's pollinators, there's predators, there's parasitoids, there's all types of things out there. Spiders are very important. I know people always want to kill spiders, but they're vital as well. They're actually predators, and they feed on a lot of those things that feed on your plants. Caterpillars, we don't like caterpillars, but we like the butterflies. But you can't get butterflies, so you got to think of that too. So like I say, they're all vital for the environment. They all serve a role, from flies down to the worms. They're all needed.
Okay, let's before we go into questions, because they give me a certain time limit, like 20 minutes. Before we go into questions, can you tell everybody where they can find you, all your contact information? Because I know a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions, and maybe they can come and take some of your classes, visit your website,
Yes.
check out your Instagram. Where can we find you at?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Urban Farm Sister, and that's Sister is SISTA. I have the link to my website on there, which is my online. I have online school, so I have classes that I offer via webinar, and then I have recorded versions of those classes as well. One class I have coming up next Saturday is a webinar showing people how to start a container garden. I also have some other classes if you want to learn how to keep bees and things. I have webinars for that. So if you go to my Instagram, you can go to my website, and my website is kiwiproduce.farm/school, and kiwi is spelled QUIWI, produce.farm/school. Like I said, it's on my Instagram. You go to the site and you can look to see what the classes that I have available, and you can register for them on there. I also have a YouTube, and I upload videos. I think I'm going to do an actual video explaining more about this heirloom GMO. We didn't even talk about clones. I forgot that. But clones, that's another thing. I want to talk about that really quickly. I know you got time's running down, but clones are where they take out so things like our bananas, as well as a lot of even the tomato plants and things that we eat, they're actually clones of another plant. So what they do is they can take a cutting from that plant and they can produce another plant from that cutting. And you can get it to root and you can get it to produce another tree. If it's like, say, a banana tree, or if it's a tomato plant, you can get it to root and produce another plant. So those are what clones are considered. This is how a lot of marijuana is produced, by clones. If you have a good mother plant, they'll just take cuttings from that mother plant and they'll just keep producing that same plant over and over again. Now, the problem with clones is it's not anything nutritional. It's not bad for you. The problem is for the plant, because you're cloning this plant. The bananas that we're eating, they are the original bananas from, I say, like 1940 something, when they first created the Cavendish banana. So that same plant is in rotation. But since it doesn't have that opportunity to produce new genes, what happens is now it's being wiped out by fungal diseases and all types of stuff, because it has not been able to adapt to this new environment. So you can eat clones, but just know that, you know, it's not good for the plant in the long run, because it's not going to have that genetic diversity.
There it is. Okay, are you able to see the questions, scroll through and see the questions? Because I'm in the car, I can't see that good.
Okay.
Are you able to see some of the questions?
Yes. What do you think about soy?
And then you can answer them as you go along. I think we got about 18 minutes.
Okay. Okay, here's a question about, this is by Rich Sapphire. It says, are there herbs that you plant that repel insects or are opposed to using chemicals? So I don't like those websites that act like that these plants repel certain insects and things, because I've seen insects even feed on the plants that are supposed to be repelling. What usually happens with these plants, they become what are called trap plants. So the insect will be more attracted to that plant than they will be, say, to a plant that you're actually growing. So if you plant these trap plants like next to your plants, what happens is the insects will be more, wanting to go to that plant and not necessarily go to your plant. Now, that's not going to say that they're not going to attack your plant as well. I found that, even like planting certain plants, one thing when I was planting collard greens, broccoli, and mustard greens, and cabbage, they're all in the same family, Brassica. When I planted the collard greens next to the cabbage, I didn't have any problems with cabbage worms on the cabbage. I had them all on the collards. Now, if I didn't have those collards there, then that's when I had the cabbage worms. So there's sometimes the insects that are laying eggs, they prefer another plant over the other. And that's what usually happens when you're using those trap-type plants. They're not really repelling them. What they're doing, they're serving as a trap to attract those insects to those particular plants. Let's see. Thank you for clarifying clones. All right, here's another question. Should we be eating meat, and are starches okay for human consumption? So I can't tell anybody what to eat or what not to eat. I don't like those. I don't like that whole this whole movement that we have going on now. Like, we're telling people they shouldn't eat this, they shouldn't eat that, because they don't do that. What works for you may not work for me. Like, I have to have meat. I've tried to go, the vegan route and things, and it doesn't do well for me. Reason being, there's a term called bioavailability. That means that's the nutrients that you can actually get from your food. So, say, using carrot as an example, if you eat a raw carrot, you're not going to get as much nutrients as you would if you cook that carrot, or if you put that carrot through a blender. What happens is, when you put it through a blender or you cook it, those cell walls in that plant actually release those nutrients that are in there. If you don't do that and you just straight up eat it, chewing it is not enough. And we don't produce all those enzymes in our bodies that can possibly break down all that cellulose and those other starches and things that we don't have those enzymes for it. So when you're cooking, or you're putting through a blender or something, you're breaking those cell walls down. You're breaking those you're breaking a lot of, you know, chemical connections and things that allow for those nutrients to be released. So when it comes to food, you know, there's certain things that you can get a plant version of it, but your body has to be able to convert it into the actual animal version that we need. People, we don't understand that we are animals. We're just a different type of animal. So if I need vitamin A, you know, they're always pushing anything that has beta carotene in it. Beta carotene is a precursor of vitamin A. To get pure vitamin A, you would have to eat meat and like liver and things like that to get pure vitamin A. Beta carotene, your body would have to convert beta carotene to the actual vitamin A, and it's a whole process that it has to be absorbed by a fat in your diet. It has to have this fat go around it, and then it gets absorbed into your small intestines. But if your body cannot convert it into that vitamin A, you're not going to get that nutrient. And so there's a lot of studies that were showing that people have problems converting beta carotene into vitamin A, and so they're becoming vitamin A deficient. So just know when it says if it's a plant-based thing and it says it has vitamin A, it's not telling the whole truth. It has beta carotene, which is like a precursor of vitamin A, but your body has to convert it, and if your body can't convert it and then you don't have any oil in your diet, it's not going to get absorbed anyway. It's just going to pass through and you're going to be deficient. So knowing these types of things about, you know, how certain vitamins are absorbed, how certain nutrients are absorbed, you have to look at how can I get that? Yes, I may be able to eat a plant oil, but is this going to be the same as if it was, you know, an animal-based oil? So I don't ever get into this argument. I don't tell people what they should or shouldn't eat. I don't even like how we, you know, have turned on each other like that. I shouldn't even know what you eat. You just eat. Just eat what you want to eat. I would suggest that you don't eat processed things because those are the ones that have the chemicals that, you know, the body can't even identify. You know, it's just stuff in there that we shouldn't be eating, plastics and all types of stuff. But, you know, if you're eating meat, I'm fine with it. I wouldn't let anybody bully you. If you like meat, eat meat. I would recommend that you try to eat, say if you're eating beef, that you try to eat grass-fed. If you're eating chicken, I recommend that you either raise your own chickens or you get them from a farmer that you know what they're feeding them, as well as, you know, make sure they're not giving them any hormones and things like that. If you eat eggs, you can get your own chickens. Like I have chickens and things, so I have eggs all the time. You can consume those eggs. You know exactly what your animals are eating. The problem is when you try to go and buy these things from the grocery store, you don't know what you're getting, and that's where the problem lies. They've given these animals, as well as the plants. Plants are no more safer than the meat. Like I said, they have all types of chemicals on them, all types of hormones put into them to make them grow. I mean, I've even seen videos where they're spray painting plants to make them, spray painting like apples and stuff to make them look redder and things like that. So we're getting a lot of stuff that our body does not need. So if you're growing your own or you're raising your own animals, you know exactly what you're putting into your body because you're the one that provided the nutrients for that. Let's see here.
Good response. Good point. Great points.
Okay, let me talk about this alkaline diet too, because I see a lot of misinformation, and a lot of it's being pushed around to make profits, make somebody a profit, and they know people don't know this stuff, so they can use people's lack of knowledge to push a product around or push an idea around. So alkaline means basic, which means it's above a 7 pH. We're going to talk about plants. We're not going to talk about anything else. Plants in general, they only grow in an acidic environment, maybe even neutral. Neutral is 7. So anything below 7 is going to be acidic. Most plants grow between 5.0 and 6.5. That's where usually most plants grow. The reason is A lot of their biological processes, they need that lower pH so that things can dissolve in the water. Calcium, which is a nutrient that plants need, it only dissolves in water at a slightly acidic pH. If you have a basic pH, it's not going to dissolve, and so that plant's not going to get that calcium. So there's a whole chart of showing, the pH where things absorb or, dissolve in water and that the plant can actually utilize. Plants utilize about 17 different nutrients. And so they all have certain pHs that they work at, and usually that pH is about 5.5 to 6.5. 7, neutral, some of the stuff can still be dissolved in water, but then you start to have what is called precipitate, where it'll just sit there and it won't dissolve in there. So when you harvest a tomato, when you harvest a lemon, when you harvest collard greens, whatever it is, just know all plants are going to have an acidic pH. Our stomach acid, the pH of it is like 2.0. There's not anything in your diet, even if you ate straight something that was basic, if it's not a strong base, it's not going to overcome the pH of your stomach. Your stomach is a strong acid. So anything that you're going to eat, it's still going to be pH of 2.0 because it's a strong acid. The only way you would change the pH of your stomach acid, which you do not want to do because then your food will not break down where your body can actually utilize it, is that you would have to consume a strong base like sodium hydroxide, which has a pH of, I think, 13. You would never drink sodium hydroxide because it would go down, burning your esophagus and everything else, and then it would mix with your stomach acid and it produce a salt. So you would have sodium chloride. It would produce sodium chloride. But then you would die because you don't have any stomach acid anymore. Your body can't break down the food, and so then, you can't digest and things like that. Also in our body, we have our different organs and different, systems, they have different pHs. Like our blood, it has a natural buffer in it that keeps it at 7.3 to like 7.4. If it goes out of that range, you're going to start pretty much dying very soon. The reason being is that your cells in your body can only reproduce and do the functions that they need at that particular pH range. If you step out of that pH range, your body starts to shut down because those cells can no longer function the way they do. You also have things in your body like amino acids. You have, lactic acid can build up in your body, like when you're exercising and things. So there's all types of pHs in your body. Your food has really nothing to do with that because once it hits your stomach acid neutralizes all of that, makes it 2.0. It has to dissolve and it breaks everything down to its purest form so that your body can absorb it in your small intestines, and whatever it doesn't use, it sends it either to your kidneys or it sends it to your large intestine and it comes out as waste. So when they're saying like, I'm on this alkaline diet and my urine is alkaline, what is happening is your body's eliminating all those OH groups that it doesn't want. That's why it's in your urine, because it doesn't want a basic pH of the body. Like your body, it knows what it can handle and it knows what it cannot handle, and what it can't handle is going to send it out as waste. Also, I know people, they take the pH of their mouth. The pH of your mouth constantly changes on a daily basis depending on what you eat. If you're eating, vinegar, and then, you go and eat or you drink some tea or something, that can totally alter the pH in your mouth constantly. So if you're taking a pH, there's bacteria in your mouth, they're producing acids and things. There's all types of things going on in your body that can change the pH in your mouth. So you can't use your mouth as an indicator of your body's pH. But just know, if you're alive and your blood pH is never going to, it's not going to let your food that you eat knock it off of that range. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm trying to find some more questions.
Good info. Yeah.
Okay,
I think
Mike.
we might have 5 minutes, maybe.
Okay, Mike's vegan journey. He said, "What do you think about tower gardens? They use no soil until you grow fruits and vegetables at home." Okay, I don't really like tower gardens. It's a condensed space. It's not really a. They try to say it's an aeroponic system where it sends out a mist of water. It's not. It's a modified NFT system which actually sends water up this tube and then it rains down on the roots of the plants. It's a hydroponic system. Um, Tower gardens, it's not worth the price to pay for those. They're like, I think $600. You can build, and I've shown people, and I have classes on hydroponics and how you can build your own setups and things a lot cheaper, and they serve the same purpose. I wouldn't go and purchase that because you're limited on things that you can grow. I found that if you try to grow indoors and you use the lights they have, it doesn't give off enough par and things like that, so the plants grow kind of leggy and they look stressed. Now if you have it outside, it's different, but it's still a condensed system that it doesn't allow the plant to flourish like it normally would. It's good if you're trying to grow lettuce and stuff, but when it get into things like trying to grow squash plants and all that, they get so big, even if you're using dwarf versions, that it crowds the tower, and it's just a bit much. So I don't really recommend them. Like I said, I can show people how to grow things and other types of systems that they can build in their homes. How many more minutes
Probably
do I
got like
have?
2 minutes left. 2.5 minutes.
Well, if you have any other
2
questions,
minutes,
I guess.
two.
Okay. If you have any other questions, you can inbox me, or you can send me an email at urbanfarmsister@gmail.com. And also you can follow me, as I'm always posting, tips and all types of things on my Instagram. So I don't want the time to run out and not be in the middle of a answer because there's a whole bunch of questions on here. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
done.
told you it was gonna be a lot. Yeah, it was gonna be a lot, guys. So yeah, make sure everybody follow her. Everybody watching this, follow